just know you're not alone, 'cause I'm gonna make this place your home.
Welcome to Good News with your host, Angela Savage. For the next hour, Angela will guide you on the road to happiness while describing her own journey with the help of friends and family of her father, championship racer Swede Savage. Phone lines are open at 702-483-4444. Once again, that's 702-483-4444. Or you can stream us online at vegasallnetradio.com. And now, let's start on the path of happiness together. Here's your host, Angela Savage.
Good morning and welcome to Good News with Angela Savage on Vegas All Net Radio. Happy Monday. I'm happy this Monday. I'm up and I'm at 'em. How did your holiday weekend go? Are some of you glad it's over? Me personally, I had a great holiday. It was very, very simple. Just my mom and my immediate family. One thing that I learned this weekend, I kind of want to share with you a little story. My son Chance Savage Jackson is 9 and he's never had any kind of motor yet. And, you know, there's people that ask me, why don't you have him in a cart yet? What are you doing? And I just want to share that's actually been more hard for me. You know, it's instead of an easy progression, it's a harder progression because of what my family's already been through, you know. So it's hard for me not to do this extra bubble wrap around my boys thing. And I know I'm irrational, totally. So I called my buddy Art Knepner, who happens to be Arnie Knepner's son, and I asked him for advice. I said, Art, I'm really struggling with this. It's just a tiny little motor on an electric scooter, but seeing, my son start down that path is really freaking me out. Can you help me out with that? And, he offered me really good advice. He said, Angela, if they want to ride, they're going to ride. The best thing you can do is get yourself right in it so that you know exactly the equipment they're using and that they're safe and that you're there with them. Otherwise they'll just go do it somewhere else. And, that really changed my perspective, Art, and I wanted to thank you for that publicly. And then, the moment I put Chance's Bell helmet on, looks just like Grandpa, of course. And then I saw him hop on this scooter, and he owned it. He's a total natural. He's zipping around the neighborhood, and all my fear just melted just like that. And so that's a really nice progression for me. I kind of been stuck there, like, oh, don't do it, but now I really want them to do what they want to do and not be. I don't want to be a helicopter scared mom, and that's going to take some work. So thank you, Art Knepner, for helping me with that perspective this weekend. You really helped my Christmas turn out great. Cruz had a good time. It was just mellow. What a wonderful Christmas it was for me. My special guest today is Mark Dill. Mark was born in Indianapolis, studied journalism at Indiana University, and spent most of his career in public relations and marketing roles in high-tech companies. He raced cars in SCCA competition and won the Southern California Jeep Production Time Trial Championship in 1980 while acquiring a second degree in marketing at Long Beach State. Very good. He also has an MBA degree from San Jose State. Mark has held a variety of positions in increasing responsibility at corporations such as AT&T, Nortel, Corvus, and Blue Cross Blue Shield. After becoming vice president of marketing at Nortel, Mark arranged sponsorship for teammates Scott Goodyear and Ari Leyendyke at the 1997 Indianapolis 500. The team enjoyed a 1-2 finish. Arnie took the lead and Scott got second, which was the first time in 50 years that a sponsor had accomplished that feat. Mark founded Mark Dill Enterprises in 2008. In that role, Mark consults on book and web projects, and has written numerous articles on auto racing history, including many published in Indianapolis Motor Speedway programs. He was vice president of marketing and public relations for 3 seasons at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway from 2010 to 2012. In more recent years, he has been active with marketing vintage auto racing with both SVRA and Racer Media and Marketing. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Hi, Angela. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad to have you. How are your holidays?
They're going great. I'm a blessed man. I've got a wonderful family, and we've enjoyed it a great deal. Sounded similar to yours, kind of a family affair. I'm glad to hear you had a nice holiday as well.
Yeah, just simple and lovely family, I'm always worried that I'm not going to have enough presents, and then there always turns out to be a plethora of presents around on Christmas morning. So, it really is more about just being with family and yeah, Cruz was 4 this year, so it was the first time he really got into Christmas. So it was so fun watching him have a blast.
Yeah, having the little ones around. My 2 daughters are both college graduates now, but I've got lots of memories.
Yeah, and that's what matters, right?
Absolutely. That's what you collect.
Yes, that's true. You have a strong interest in the history of the early days of auto racing. How did you develop an interest in that particular era? And tell us about your website, firstsuperspeedway.com.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know whether I can quite put my finger on it. I grew up in Indianapolis, and I
That'll
remember
do it, right?
at a very young age, and hearing everybody talking about the Indianapolis 500, and that was in the early '60s when I first really became aware of it, and I was quite young then, and then there's just been something that's always fascinated me about the turn of the 20th century and thinking about how the Speedway was built in 1909 and the first Indy 500 in 1911. And just, there just aren't that many people that really, really know those characters. And so I just took an interest in it. And that's really what First Super Speedway is all about. It's a free site. I guarantee you it's got more original content on it than you can find anywhere else in the world, in one spot. And I just love doing it, and I hope people enjoy it.
That's just great. I'm going to spend a little more time there too, and if you don't mind, I'll share some of the stuff you put up on there. For obvious reasons, I love the history too. I'm drawn to that era, back in the 70s. I love getting to know IndyCar now and seeing how it's progressed and watching how it grows and stuff. But, I'm really partial to the vintage part of it too. And
Sure.
to see how far
Yeah.
they've come, in just, since 1911, it's really something to watch.
It is. It's pretty amazing, and and they've come in a lot of ways. There's just been a lot of changes. Obviously, so much even from when your dad raced, and just watching those has created a lot of fuel for what we call bench racers, people like myself, and you're rapidly becoming one that just like to observe and comment on developments, both in the past and what's happening nowadays.
It's really fascinating to me, that's how I get to know my dad, is that he was the motorhead, so I'm always trying to be in his brain and think like he wants to think. And I sure think he would like to, I would like to think he's very proud of me for doing my best here to really promote the sport and to talk about some of the historical, significant characters that need to be remembered, and really just keeping it going as much as we all can. We never want to see IndyCar stop, so it's fun to watch the progression too, and how things change. You're one of the few people who have been involved in both team sponsorship side of the sport and also the marketing and PR side when you worked at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Tell us about the similarities and differences of those roles.
Well, it is kind of interesting. I mean, obviously, when you're what you would call a promoter, as I was at the Speedway, it's all about demonstrating the value to the people the fans first and foremost, but as a result of having a big audience, you're able to attract the people from the side of the table that I had bet on, which are the sponsors.
Yeah.
And they like to expose their products, whether it's a business-to-business proposition, as I was at Nortel, or a business-to-consumer kind of arrangement, as you do with the beer companies and the soft drink companies and so on. And you're just kind of looking at, there's so many similarities, and I guess the sponsor on the side of the table has to play the role of skeptic. You have to understand how you're going to get value out of the exposure and the networking and the business opportunity that some kind of a relationship with a motorsports property is going to bring you. And on the promoter side, or on the, whether it's a venue or it's a team, you need to convince the sponsor that that's exactly true. And I think the challenge for the promoter is to get in the sponsor's head and to really understand, well, what does that person want? And I've seen different people do it, and some, obviously, is true in any pursuit. Some do it better than others. But I think the thing that I know I brought to the table there was I had been a sponsor, and I understood.
Mm-hmm. And you'd also been a driver, too. You raced in the SCCA championship. So you've actually been on the driver's side, the PR side, and the marketing side, and the sponsor side, right? So it sounds like you pretty much have an idea of all the parts that go on in there, right?
Well, true. I don't talk too much about the driving. That was something I did because I, always had an interest in it and grew up watching people such as Swede Savage and marveling at their ability. But I never would pretend to put myself in a category like that.
But you did drive. You were in a car and you drove. That's a heck of a lot more than most people can say, right? You got to feel the red mist.
Yeah, I did, and it was. I always wanted to feel what it was like. I remember being a kid, and I just wanted to know what would it be like to come down for the green flag, in a pack of snarling cars with every driver putting his foot into it, and everyone wanting to be very competitive and get the best of the next guy. And so I am happy that I did get to do that.
Yeah, you know what? That's got to be the ultimate adrenaline rush that I can think of. One of the biggest on the planet, that doesn't involve anything illegal or alcoholic. I can't imagine. I can't imagine how that. Well, I did get to do a few laps, in the Mini Cooper at the road course at IMS, and it's hard to describe how it made me feel, doing laps, finishing laps for my dad, and of course it was a spiritual experience for me and a total dream. So I mean, I'm glad if I never get behind the wheel again, I got to experience kind of the rush a little bit once, and I feel so fortunate that I got to do that.
Yeah, I could see where it would have special meaning for you, and I'm glad you got to do that too. Getting back there in 2014 really changed me. It was like I say, it was like the water that this seed needed, and it kind of sprouted me up into more of who I would have been, besides if he hadn't crashed or if I hadn't gone through so many wrong roads, to get back to where I am now. Well, and they say that everything happens for a reason, and that's a tough message to hear sometimes. But the path you were on brought you to where you are today, and
Amen.
And your mission seems like a very noble one. So my hat's off to you, and I'm sure that you're touching a lot of people that you encounter or listen into this show.
And you know what? That's really what I'm going for. If there's anything that I can do to help anybody else get through anything that's hard, I want to be a place where people feel safe and they can come to me and say, I'm really struggling with this thing or that thing. Can you offer me any love or advice? Or, I like to be there for people because I spent so much time feeling bad that now that I've figured out how to get my life back on track, I really, really want to give back to people who are still struggling and offer them some hope. Say you really can get your life changed around. You just have to change your perspective and really, really try.
Yeah, and I think what you're doing is both brave, but also it's quite necessary for you to be really honest about what you've been through and to be totally unashamed and just share it. And that enables others to come forth and engage you, and that's, I'm sure, part of their healing process.
Man, that means a lot to me, Mark Dill. Thank you so much for those kind words of encouragement. That helps really keep me going. And I'm really enjoying what I'm doing now. I've said I feel like I'm in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing really for the first time in my life, and that in itself is a blessing. Also, I can say that I know my dad and my sister are proud of me, and my mom actually too. And I've never really been able to say that until now in my life, and what a blessing that is. What were some of the things you did when you were VP of Marketing and Public Relations at IMS? What does that job entail?
Well, I mean, I guess it entails meeting challenges, which sounds like a broad brush answer, but it's not. Obviously, the condition of the business that you're in, regardless of what business it is going to some degree, or to a very great degree, influence the strategy that you have with your job and the impact that you want to have on the company that you're working for. And, the Speedway was always special to me. I think it's pretty obvious just on what we've talked about it, growing up there, and it meant so much to me from a very early age, 7 or 8 years old. I was just always about the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
You get hooked. You hear everyone say you don't really get it until you go there. And it almost was like, yeah, you don't get it till you go there. But then I went there and it was like, it really changed everything. It really is something everybody should experience once in their lifetime. It's nothing like on the television, you can't feel the energy in the air through the TV as much, and just hearing the sounds and, oh man, what how exciting, and these guys are gladiators. They're out there risking their lives, and I just have so much respect for somebody who can be driven so strongly by their passion that, fears of injury or even death are just behind you. You're just full speed ahead. And I guess it's hard for me to wrap my brain around these heroes, that are able to do that and even hold down a family. And, these guys are they're amazing. And I'm so proud to say that my dad was amazing too, and he was one of those guys that would drive anything. You couldn't stop him. Nobody ever had a bad word to say about my dad. That makes me very proud, and I'm just having a really fun time stepping up into the role of being Swede Savage's daughter, which I never really knew if I could measure up, and was part of my struggle. But now I'm here, I'm having a blast, and it's just so nice to have you too on the show.
Well, thank you.
Earlier this year, you wrote an article for Racer Magazine's series called IndyCar 2008. That got a strong reaction from readers. What is it you said, and why do you think it got such a strong reaction?
Well, I think it's interesting, and I've thought about it since. The essence of the article, and it kind of goes back to your earlier question about, well, what were some of the things I did with the Speedway? The reality is the state of the sport is not at the level of health that everybody would like it to be. And I think it's pretty well documented that that it's had some struggles, and certainly the series being profitable and the attendance and television ratings on the series, and even the Indy 500 aren't where everybody would like them to be. And so I think some of the the basic issues that if you look at it, what do you hear over and over again within the customers of the fans? What do they want? And a big portion of that is they want to see. They think what's missing is what it used to be. And I want to insert a word of caution here. It's really hard to just make a blanket statement saying they want, because you're clearly dealing with a fractured customer set.
Right.
And I do think that the readers at Racer probably are more the road racing oriented fan, the American road racing oriented fan. And there is a schism between those that fan base and their characteristics and their interests, and I think that dates back to as early as 1904. And the oval centric fan, and since the early 70s, there was this progression. Actually, I think when the Europeans first started coming over in the 60s, as I was growing up, and you were seeing more of an influence from Formula One, you started to see more and more road racers. The design of cars, the aerodynamics, and really the profound shift came, I think, in the early 80s with the advent of ground effects. And the wings were present a few years prior to that. But this heavy aerodynamics focus, and the essence of what I was saying in the article was that you do have grassroots American drivers. I hear a lot of complaints that there isn't a strong enough American driver influence.
I hear that. I hear that so often, and
right.
I do wonder what would be a proper protocol for that. I mean, could we compromise and have like quotas, like a certain amount of Americans, we want in this race to keep the American, fan base watching. Now, I don't know if that's pushing into scary grounds, about equalities and stuff, but I hear that over and over that Americans want to see more American drivers on the track, and what's a proper way we could work towards that? Is there a proper way we could work towards that?
Well, that was kind of what the essence of what I was trying to say in the article. And I don't think that earning a spot in the Indy 500 can be anything but based on merit. And so my basic premise was, and I still believe this, is that we don't have the right race car design. There's no reason why it has to be sort of a low-cost mimic of Formula One, and that it would probably be a benefit to have it sharply distinct, so there's no marketplace confusion. When you see an Indy car,
amen, I get it.
You see this high horsepower, snarling, hard to drive beast. In the article, I made a comment about, probably by necessity, to reconnect with the grassroots American driver, that the car would be front-engined. And I think people leapt on that, especially those that just didn't want to hear anything about eliminating wings and ground effects. And
right.
I think that the real issue isn't whether or not the engine is in the front or the rear, but that the design of the car translates to what an American grassroots driver crafts his or her skills on.
Right.
And you do have what I would call an organic ladder system, but it doesn't connect to the Indy 500 anymore. I mean, years and years ago, the bull rings, the midgets, the sprints, and so forth had a direct connection. They don't now. They're not relevant. And I wish, for example, Brian Clausen all best wishes in the world, but people have to understand the level of challenge that he's taking on, coming from his background, as opposed to learning his craft in more of the formula style cars with a heavy aero influence, he's really operating at a disadvantage. I happen to think he's a hugely talented driver, and he might be able to overcome that.
Yeah.
But doing it on a one-off kind of deal, you only be in the Indy 500, and sitting into a car that is completely different than anything he drives the rest of the year, really puts him at a disadvantage. And that
I would think so.
Yeah, any of these guys coming from the old sprint and midget, and that's why you see most of them. You see a guy like Rico Abreu, or Kyle Larson, who's already in NASCAR. I mean, they're moving. They're a younger generation that even think about going to the Indy 500. It's just not a logical path. What is logical is for them to go to NASCAR, and that's where they tend to go. They make money,
right?
And their skills translate. And the primary theme of the article I wrote is that the Indy car needs to be redesigned so that it translates to what American drivers are raised on. And I said that for two reasons. One, because you have a lot of American drivers who are learning how to drive in these sprint, midget, et cetera, cars. Mm-hmm. But also, you've got an entire ladder system, a road to Indy ladder system that is really the driver is the customer, not the fan. I mean, it isn't like those events have significant fan bases,
right?
So you basically have a series where the driver is the customer, and the teams prepare these cars and they purchase the equipment, and it's really more analogous to going to school and paying your tuition and learning your trade to prepare you for that next level where hopefully you can eventually get a ride where they actually pay you to race.
Right.
And it just seems fundamentally flawed to me. And I'm sure that there's people that are listening to this right now that probably are yelling at me over the, while they're sitting there listening to it. But
You're okay.
But that's my opinion. And you asked the question. I think that's at the heart of a change, and it would be a radical change. I totally appreciate that. It would upset a lot of apple carts, but I think that's what's necessary to begin putting us in the right direction so that we've got a better chance. And I also think that things like the vintage racing and creating a festival environment are part of the mix as well.
I see a strong future for vintage racing because I think people are craving the nostalgia. It's that nostalgic feeling that they get when they were kids and they were at the track with their dad, and a lot of that is dissipating, and I think some of the older fan base might be dissipating with that. I have a question for you. This last year with Justin Wilson's crash, may he rest in peace, there was a lot of talk about putting a canopy on an Indy car, and my first response was, oh, it's not Indy if there's a canopy, etc. But then I actually saw a design of a concept car for the future for Indy that did have a canopy on it, and to be honest, I didn't think it really took away from the aesthetic at all, and obviously offers more safety for those for the heads that are still out and unprotected. What is your professional opinion on putting the top on that Indy car or not? Do you think that changes the sport? Does that make it not Indy? What do you think? Because did we lose some fans because the Justin Wilson crash was so tragic, and then also Dan Weldon, of course, are the fans, are they wanting to put the canopy on there so that there's less fatalities? What's your opinion?
Well, I mean, I don't know that I have a strong opinion one way or the other. I mean, I think there's people with more expertise than I have certainly to determine what do we want to accomplish here. I think there's some legitimate concerns, and I've listened to people that are pretty smart on this, and talking about things like unintended consequences. You can have a knee-jerk reaction and want to put a canopy or, way back in the day. And I remember seeing them back around the time that Swede Savage raced, that there were complete roll cages on a few of the cars. I remember seeing Bruce walk up in one. So, same basic concept, low tech, but same basic concept. Mm-hmm. It's got to be thought through. As far as the cars changing, they have throughout the history. In fact, I would say that the period of time where we've seen the least change, at least in terms of an aesthetic, as you say, or in terms of the look of a car, is between now and, say, around 1980, when the Yellow Submarine first, Jim Hall's Grand Effects car first debuted. I know hardcore race fans can tell the difference, but I'll tell you what, there's a lot of blame, and if you put that car beside a car today, and they'd have a tough time. They just think we're two race cars.
Yeah.
And that's certainly not something you could have done in 1980 and compare, a car from 20, 30, 40 years prior was dramatically different.
Yeah.
So I think, change can be healthy, and it even goes back to what I was talking about with whether it's a front engine car or whatever. But stripping the wings and getting rid of the aero, but the car wouldn't necessarily look like an old roadster. It would have the safety equipment, and
right.
that could include a canopy. It could be a dramatically different looking car. But more to your question, what's the right way to go? I guess I don't mean to cop out on you, but I believe that.
That's a toughie. That's a real toughie.
You don't want the guy in the car trapped.
Right, because
healthy,
I did read. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I did read that the plastic or whatever it is that makes the canopy can melt at a certain degree, and then you're buried in melted plastic. That could be really bad too. So I don't have any right to really know what's safe or not either. Like you said, I just I know they're talking about it, those canopies, and I'm into growing with the sport too. I'd rather see the cars morph into something better than IndyCar just drop altogether. We got to keep this sport going on forever. We can never let it go anywhere. Mm-hmm. Tell us about your involvement with the SVRA and what you do to help promote that vintage racing series.
Sure. Well, and going back to some of the things I did at the Speedway when I was there, I solicited the involvement of the SVRA to come to run at the Speedway, and I originally had a vision of creating a Goodwood Festival speed environment. And if you're not, or some of your listeners aren't familiar with that, it's a mega event that celebrates both the history and the current technology of automobiles and auto racing in Goodwood, England, and it attracts a legitimate 150,000 people in a weekend.
Yeah,
it's a marvelous event, and
I love it. I love the SVRA.
I really felt that something like that could be, and I still believe that could be created at the Speedway. An element of that would be vintage racing. Another element of that would be automobile company displays, and what you would call, and we started this too, the Celebration of Automobiles, more of a concours event where you celebrate like classic cars and other cars that are collector machines. But with SVRA, I thought that was a good place to start, and I got in touch with the gentleman who was just purchasing the organization, Tony Perella, who I think the world of. The guy has...
what a nice guy.
He's a very nice gentleman, but he's also a very astute businessman. And he just happened to be acquiring the organization at the time I called, to pursue a vintage race at the Speedway. And he got my phone call and flew in the very next day. And I told him that, man, I can't be sure that this is going to happen. I don't want you to waste your time. He said, don't worry about it. I'll be there. It doesn't matter. You don't owe me anything. And but I was so impressed with him and felt that he was a true businessman, but also a win-win kind of guy, that he would not he would be as interested in his partner's success as his own.
Right, and I think that's the way to be.
Breed.
Well, I think it's the new breed, I think we're seeing a little bit more and more of that. I know I live by that theory. I like to say that dog eat dog is over, that kind of went out with the 80s and the 90s. I think in this generation, we need to look for win-win situations, where everybody can come up together and then you form more unity, which ultimately forms more success, at least in my opinion. Real quick, I want to play that really nice Italian song that you sent to me.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to try and get the video in the production too for the commercial, but I'm going to take a really quick break and play I loved it, this beautiful Italian song. Do you mind waiting for just a moment?
No, not at all.
Okay, we will be right back. Remember, you're listening to Good News with Angela Savage on Vegas All Net Radio.
Nuvolari è basso di statura, Nuvolari è al di sotto del normale. Nuvolari è a 50 kg d'ossa, Nuvolari ha un corpo eccezionale. Nuvolari ha le mani come artigli, Nuvolari ha un talismano contro i mali. Il suo sguardo è di un falco per i figli, i suoi muscoli sono muscoli eccezionali. Gli uccelli nell'aria perdono l'ali quando passa Nuvolari. Quando corre Nuvolari mette paura perché il motore è veloce mentre taglia ruggendo.
Good morning and welcome back to Good News with Angela Savage. I have Mark Dill on the line. Mark, are you still there?
I sure am.
We just played that awesome song that you sent me, the Italian song, and I'm going to put that video in with the production too because it was so awesome. I wanted to ask you,
Sure.
do you have any memories of my father or the 1973 Indianapolis 500 that you would like to share?
Well, I always admired your father. I mean, he was one of the cool young guys coming up. And I thought, beyond his two Indy 500, I really was fascinated with his work with Dan Gurney and his big victory in Phoenix and his runs with the Barracuda and Trans Am. And even though the Plymouth Barracuda project probably wasn't as successful as everybody had hoped, I just thought that car was so cool.
Is that the most beautiful car? I mean,
it is gorgeous.
Doesn't get
And
much better than that. I have to be honest. Maybe I have a biased opinion, but his also the red Eagle. The 40 Eagle for the Indy 500. What an amazing car! And then also the Barracuda with the blue and the red and the orange and the 42. Oh, those are the two best. Well, I love all of the cars he drove, but man, was that spectacular.
That one, what was it, in 72?
The
that was one
Antares.
of the oddest looking cars.
Man, I've tried to be nicer when I talk about that car, but it's not my favorite car for sure. The color, I'm not sure I understand. And then those three interchangeable noses, it's like,
Yeah.
they were all kind of
But
awful. And the truth is the car never ran very great either. You know, it just wasn't the best car, but I think it was breaking new grounds because they were using a computer to design it more than any car that they had done that yet with, or something along those lines. It was groundbreaking, but ugly as sin. you know,
there's one point to make about that.
Yes.
And I think that's a big part of what fans miss. People talk about these cars and the variety and the experimentation. And a lot of that has been stripped away because of the heavy reliance on aero, which drives everybody pretty much to something of similar design.
They all kind of look the same. It's true.
Those were dramatically different cars. And so even though it may not have been, even though that car, and there are many other examples of cars that were kind of odd looking, they captured the imagination of the fans, and the fans loved them.
Yeah, and you know what? If no matter what your opinion on that car is, people talk about it all the time. You
That's
know,
right.
It's unforgettable. For whatever reason,
right.
your reason is that's an unforgettable car, and you know that's a good thing.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's exactly to the point. You wanted to see those one-off or one or two cars of the same type, and people would just. You talk about vintage racing. Excuse me, I got a little bit of a cold. I think that the design of the cars has a lot to do with this growth in vintage racing.
Yeah.
And I have, when I was at the Speedway, I started a fan council and deliberately selected people from different demographics.
Yes.
Because I wanted the input of a diverse group.
Very smart.
And it was talking to some of the younger people. If you go to the Brickyard Invitational, you will see a lot of young couples, obviously on dates, holding hands. You'll see young families pushing strollers. It's not just the older crowd.
Right.
Thinking about the old days. And you talk to some of them, and they just marvel at the design. And I told Tony Perella, you know, this sport is somewhat ironically a perfect fit for this Instagram camera phone 21st century networked environment where somebody sees something cool and they want to take a picture of it and then, you know, post it somewhere where all their friends can see it. And that is part of the appeal, those unique cars.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
That's what Goodwood is all about, this festival of sights and sounds. They aren't all the same looking cars. The wide variety is so much of the appeal.
Right. I can totally get that. Tell me, what do you enjoy the most about racing? What's your favorite part?
It probably is the history.
I agree.
People have talked about like the Indy 500, and someone might criticize it and say the race wasn't particularly good that year or whatever. And sometimes the races are better than others. But the thing I've always said is, no matter what, you just saw another chapter of history being written.
Amen. That's true. So true.
So everybody that helped build it, that's what's great about the Brickyard Invitational. We do the Indy Pro-Am. It's so much fun to go back and recruit 33 of the former Indy 500 drivers and meet with them and talk with them and reminisce and then stick them in a car and see them go out there and get after it again.
Yeah. You know, I got to go to an SVRA event at the Speedway. I worked with Miles Ahead Motoring School, and our booth was not out in the grass; it was in the garages, right? Mm-hmm. And so, not only am I just over the moon because I'm actually working in the garages at IMS. But then somehow throughout the day, we realized that the garage I was in was the exact same garage my dad was in back in the day. Same spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The garages are different, but yes, the same.
The garages are different, but the same. Yeah. same spot,
Yeah,
you know, and
yeah.
I just thought that was cool, you know, kind of a first full circle kind of thing. And, you know, I felt really honored. I just, you know, that place is magic. And I, especially down in those garages, you know, because you can feel the history so strong. It's almost like you can hear the sounds, you know, from the last 100 years somehow still echoing around in there. And I just think it's magic. That place is magic and I love it. I want to do more SVRA things. Please tell Tony I said hello. I did meet him once. What a particularly nice guy. Like you said, love him. And please know that this is an open line for you and for SVRA and also Racer Magazine. You know, if you ever want anything on the show, just let me know. And this is an open line of communication for you as well. You know,
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
we'll take you up on that.
Please do. Please get involved. This is so fun, and I'm looking forward to working with, you know, people that are loving it as much as I am now. You know, I might be late to the party, but better late than never, right?
Well, exactly. You know, and I was going to say when I was listening to you talk, it's obvious to me that you get it. When you talk to somebody and they talk about how they come in under the tunnel in the short chute at the south end of the track, you know, gate 2, and they come in and there's the museum in front of them, and they just feel all the spirits, not just of the drivers,
yes,
the crews, but all those fans.
Yeah, they all leave a piece of themselves there. You know, everyone that's there, a piece of them stays, and then you really feel that. It's amazing. It really is amazing.
So much emotion poured into that real estate.
Yeah, and it's nice for me to have a place. You know, Disneyland's never been my thing. It's dirty, and you wait in lines all the time. IMS is like my Disneyland. You know, that's to me the happiest place on earth.
There you go.
Plus, it's nice for me to, you know, my dad and I have our special brick there just around the second tree under the pagoda, so I can go and pay my respects there instead of having to go to a cemetery. It's nicer for me to visit at the track, you know, where I know he's still around there. You know, the Savage Spirit will always be there. I know that for a fact. Last question, because we're getting down to the bottom line here. Part of my show, Mark, is about overcoming difficulties in life. Have you ever had a time in your life when you felt hopeless, frustrated, depressed? And how did you overcome that? And how do you overcome that on a daily basis?
Well, I think to some degree, you know, I was thinking about your situation that I can relate on a certain level. My eldest daughter, I have 2 daughters, had a great battle with depression growing up, and it was never fully explained, but it's a form of mental illness.
Yes.
And, you know, a lot of people are ashamed of things like that, but as I learned about it, there's nothing to be ashamed of. It's a condition, just as diabetes is.
Amen.
And it definitely took a toll on our family. It stressed all of us. And I really didn't know whether she was going to make it through her teenage years.
Oh, God bless her.
And it was such a struggle. And but as she grew, and with therapy and with love and, you know, the right intervention and support system that so many other people don't get, she was able to overcome that. And she's now dedicated her life to psychology. She's now a licensed social worker. She's on scholarship at NC State, North Carolina State University, for a doctorate in psychology.
Wow.
She's employed by the school system as a counselor in a special needs class. And if it sounds like I'm bragging on her, I suppose I am. But
you should.
She came from such a nadir, and we all did. And you know, it was a period, and the year I think about is 2004, and I resonated with something that I heard somebody say. It's like, if you're not paying attention, God will get your attention.
Amen.
And he got my attention.
Yeah.
And So for me personally, apart from her brave fight within herself, the brave fight within our family for her, and then what it was doing to me as a person.
Yeah.
And it definitely touched me on a spiritual level.
Thank God that you were able to get through that. Part of my show is about talking about PTSD, depression, alcoholism, addiction, anxiety, all of those things. It's time to take the negative stigma off of these things so we can talk about it more and understand it more and create more unity and more healing. So wow, more power to you. Thank you so much. We're coming to the end of our show now. I really, really appreciate you coming on with me, Mark.
No problem.
I hope you'll come on again sometime soon.
Anytime, let me know.
Okay, I'm going to play your songs that I love. Remember, this was Good News with Angela Savage on VegasAllNetRadio.com. Thank you for listening in and have a great week.
Drop me